political landscape battered by historical amnesia and deliberate distortion, where truth is routinely bent and accountability endlessly postponed. A new generation is pushing back, louder, sharper, and more defiant. At the center of that confrontation stands a 33-year-old academic and activist carrying a name that history cannot ignore and a voice that refuses to stay silent. Tonight, we ask the hard questions. Can moral authority still disrupt a system built on corruption? Is legacy enough, or does this generation need a new kind of courage? Good evening, I am Ox Ballado. This is not nostalgia. This is not symbolism. This is the game changer. We are days away from a milestone that many said would be forgotten by now, the 40th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution. Today, we're joined by someone who isn't just a descendant of that history, but a modern architect of its survival. His name is deeply woven into the history of Philippine democracy. Yet he is forging a direction distinctly his own. Please welcome Aquino Dee.
Hi, Ox. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so glad that you're able to join us today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a good conversation.
A game changer at that.
Not sure I'm quite there yet, pero sige, let's run with it.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll give justice to that title, pretty much. Anyway, well, first off, you've spent your life in the shadow of giants. You know, in 2026, with the political landscape shifting the way it has. Do you feel like you're defending a legacy, or are you trying to reinvent it for a generation that wasn't even born when your grandmom was president?
I think it's more the former, no? So, I guess how I got involved here was after the 2022 election when President Marcos won. That was something that I was really worried about in the lead up to the May elections, and given how well he was doing in the surveys, it's something that I felt I'd have to come to terms to, that is the most likely outcome. And what gave me comfort was the idea that, okay, whether Marcos wins, Robredo wins, or whoever else, there's still something I'd like to change about the discourse on my family. And so that's when I forget if it was a little after the election or a little bit before, I asked my family, I'd like to be more active in the Aquino Foundation. The mandate is to preserve the legacies of Senator Ninoy Aquino, President.
Yeah, so you head the foundation, right? Yeah?
Yes, I'm currently the executive director now. And it's Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation, but my Tito Noy was also added to the sort of mandate of the foundation after he passed away. So it's really, my thing is telling their story, but I have a belief that, you know, history is really just, it's only history unless it talks to things in the present. No? So I guess it became a bit, I'm not sure if natural is the right term, but it sort of became intuitive to talk about current issues alongside talking about that legacy.
All right, okay. Still with your Lola, the former President Corazon Aquino. What's the one piece of advice she gave you? Not as a leader, but as a grandmother, that you find yourself learning on today's as things get heated online?
Well, I think the one that I remember very distinctly was to pray for your enemies. And I'm not saying I follow it regularly.
Okay.
But I remember, it's a very funny thing kasi in my third year of high school, we had a retreat, no? And then it's common for loved ones to write yung palangkas, the letters for people going on the retreats. And then she said, this was 2008, and then she said at the time, she ended it something like, pray for each other, pray for our country, and especially pray for our president, was President Arroyo at the time, who she was opposed to. And I think it was funny kasi when you're reading the palankas, it's a very emotional moment for the people reading it. And then ako, I think I just laughed out loud when I read that because I remember her saying at one point that when she was opposing the Marcos Sr. regime, the Marcos Sr. dictatorship, things only started changing and the regime only started sort of falling, or the end of that dictatorship only started happening when she found it in herself to start praying for President Marcos. So I got a laugh out of,
Right, yeah.
pray for President Arroyo. That's what it really means, is pray for something better to replace her, I think. So I think in a way, I don't think I can bring myself to do that quite yet about our current president or other politicians I don't care for, but I do hope that something better replaces what we have right now.
Well, importante yun, yung pray for them. Anyway, well, that's very President Corazon.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Being a devout Catholic. Yeah. Anyway, pag-usapan natin tong the image, the label of being, member of a family na matatawag natin icon of democracy, being an Aquino. What is it like to walk into a room where people already have a preset, image of who you are because of your grandparents, Cory and President Cory and the late Senator Ninoy?
Well, I think so on one hand, I think it's not too different from what other people experience, in the sense na wala namang gusto magpahiya sa pamilya nila, di ba? So you want to conduct yourself in a way that's worthy of the sort of legacy that they have, that does justice to it. And I think that's common among everyone. The difference, guys, as you alluded to, people are maybe more likely to know who I'm related to compared to who the average Filipino is related to. So I guess there's an added pressure there. But yun, I think it comes from a place that's common to everyone. We want to do justice to our families, to our loved ones.
But do you ever feel boxed by your surname?
I do think, on reflection, I think I take less risks because of that surname compared to, I think, what other people would do. Because I found out it's true. No? My cousin liked to say that, alam mo, if we ever get our names in like in a headline of a newspaper or something, it won't be Kiko Dee does X, right? It is Apo ni Cory does X, or Pamangkin ni Pinoy does Y, right? So I think that level of that awareness, I think maybe has made me more risk averse, basically. That I'm less willing to do risky things out of fear of maybe sort of tarnishing that legacy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've seen you before with your grandmother, with your mom, but in terms of being active in the political front, you stayed quiet. But what made you join the scene, so to speak?
Well, there's a very specific set of events. No? So I mentioned I started
growing
becoming
up, and up to the president.
Well, growing up, no. But I guess the thing leading to immediately what I've been active with is again in 2022 I asked to become more involved again in the Aquino Foundation. I thought the main things we'd be taking care of were the death anniversaries of the three, Ninoy, Cory, Pinoy. But then come 2023, we found out that a lot of people started asking, what's the plan for People Power anniversary? That was the 37th anniversary at the time. And my answer was, I don't know, I plan to participate in whatever's there. That's not really my job to organize. But then I found that, at that time, I don't really blame the groups, but there's a bit of kumakapa-kapa yung mga tao na how do we commemorate People Power under a Marcos presidency. So the plans were a bit scattered, different groups, and people weren't paying that much attention to it. So I thought, okay, maybe going forward we need to be more focused on commemorating People Power. So we put together a group called the Buhayang People Power Campaign Network in preparation for the 2024 commemoration, right? But 2024 at the start
it started way back 2024 pa.
Yes, so our group started 2024.
Okay.
But sumabay yun sa charter change ni Speaker Romualdez, right? If you recall, at the start of the year, he put out, or their group, I don't know if it was Speaker Romualdez directly, but their group put out that ad na init sa puwera daw tayo ng Constitution kaya dapat palitan na siya. So definitely we couldn't take that lying down, right? So from just commemorating People Power, it became an anti-charter change campaign, right? And I think that's when I got involved with a lot of these activist groups, and that network sort of stayed when VP Sara had her episode towards the end of the year in November. That group was involved in the filing of the first impeachment complaint against her, and I was lucky enough to be a part of that. And then definitely, like during elections, I campaigned for candidates I support, but then after that, it was back to impeachment. After that, the flood control scan happened, or the big rally started happening in September of 2025, and then tuloy-tuloy lang. So it's just, it's issues I care about. It wasn't really something I was planning to be this active on maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but I'm grateful that I can contribute to these causes that are important to me.
Right. Well, you did mention the name of VP Sara. I'm going to ask you a question as regards the most recent pronouncement that she made out of her intent to run in the 2020 election. But before that, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
I would certainly love to hear your reaction about it, because I understand that you were one of those who filed one of the impeachment complaints.
That's right.
If I'm not mistaken, that was the second impeachment complaint.
This time around, when
I'm sorry,
this is the second impeachment.
This is the second
That's
impeachment
right.
complaint. Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, this one first. How do you honor a monumental history without being trapped by it?
I don't know what the trap is, I guess, because I think it's something that I care about myself, right?
Kasunduan po ng lahat na kailangang palitawin po ang naratibo ng mga biktima ng korupsyon, yung mismong mga biktima ng korupsyon, yung mga napapasukan ng baha sa bahay at yung mga kailangang tumawid ng baha para magtrabaho, yung mga nagkakasakit, yun po yung palilitawin din po sa programa natin. At kasama din po ang mga testimonya mula sa mga nakakaalam, yung mga witnesses to corruption mula sa iba't ibang sangay ng gobyerno.
And I guess in a way, it's more, I wonder about, one of my hang-ups before I was active in the Aquino Foundation was what I really care about, having studied political science, democracy is such a core concept, at least in the way it's taught in UP and in the other schools that I've gone to. The protection of democracy is something that I care about the most. Right?
Yes.
And I think my question at first was, okay, I come from this family, and that family has a powerful legacy, but because of things that happened, a lot of detractors there as well. I was always concerned, is bringing the name of my family into the broader discourse of democracy helpful for democracy, right? Does that give it additional baggage? So that's always something I was a little conscious about. But when 2022 came, what I realized was, well, in the end, the thing that I can actually directly affect, that I can do that nobody else is really, well, not nobody else, but few other people are placed in a position to do something about, is to talk about the name of my family, right? So that's why I've become active in the Aquino Foundation and such. But I think as far as the legacy is concerned, my hope is that the legacy is something that allows me to work on a cause that I really care about, which is democracy. But I guess I'm also, it's also a point of reflection where I ask, like, okay, to what extent are these two things helpful to each other? And it's something I'm constantly trying to revisit. So it's not so much a trap, it's more, these are two related things, like the things I care about and also the legacy that I have. And right now, my assessment is these two things are going in the same direction, so I'm happy to pursue both of them.
If your grandparents are listening and they're present to give comments or reactions on what you're currently doing, what do you think are your grandparents? What would they disagree with you on today?
I think many things. No, they wouldn't want me to be this loud. Very much. Si Lola Correa, remember when I told her that I was planning to take political science in college. Her response was, "Why, of all things you could take?" Like, and I honestly believe that I could have said any other course, and she would have been happier with my response. So definitely
political science.
Yeah. So I think she wanted us to have what she wanted for herself, which is a private sort of life, a quiet, more quiet life. And I'm glad that I've had that for a while. No, I've only been active very recently, so I had that time of privacy. I'm glad that my family gets to continue to enjoy that. But I think right now there's a value to being quiet, and I hope to get back to that at some point. But given what we're facing right now, I think I'm grateful that I can at least in the way my network assesses it, I'm glad that my lending my voice to these causes helps progress these causes. No? So, medyo like, baka sasawayin ako ni Lola in a few years, but right now I think yeah, it's easier to say sorry than to ask permission.
But generally, it's all about you being loud now. You just call it loud, I mean, quote unquote. But, you know, during the time of your Lolo Ninoy, I do understand, and everybody will certainly agree that he's one of the perhaps most loudest voices in terms of voicing out the clamor of the Filipino people as regards to the restoration of democracy. And sure, he'll be happy to see you being you today.
Oh, well, I couldn't speak to what Lolo Ninoy would say. I've never met him naman. I hope it's I hope it's resonant. I hope it's in the same direction. But I think in the end, I'm more curious that if we do ever, like, if I ever see Lola Cory again, or if I get to meet Lolo Ninoy at some point, I am curious what they would say.
What they would say.
I honestly do not know and would like to know. No? So, yeah.
Okay. Sino si Kiko Dee as a political activist? What does he stand for, and what are his advocacies?
Well, I think I think democracy is the first thing, and so I think my activism is informed by my own understanding of politics and political science. And one of the ideas that we came up with, that we know in political science, is like the idea of democracy is very basic. No, people should be able to govern themselves. No?
Right.
People should have what they want in terms of like how
The majority should
government
always
works,
prevail.
right? Something to that effect. But that idea, I think, as time went on, ended up becoming balanced by the idea of human rights. And like, okay, the majority should have what it wants, but there are limits to that, right? You can't, even if the majority says that, say, this person has to die, that won't fly because that violates sort of human rights. So for me, what's important is, in democracy, how do we find that balance? Where I think today the balance maybe has gone sort of against human rights and more towards just, okay, people can get whatever they want no matter what. So that's like the populist side of democracy. So for me, I feel that the right to life is extremely important.
Right.
Freedom of speech, the freedom of expression,
Expression,
all of
yeah,
these things are
the
very
press and
important. And these
everything,
are the first things I would sort of ring the bell on when we see violations of that. And then I guess the next layer is when we talk about the current issue that we have right now, corruption. The way I think of it, aside from corruption just being theft, no, which is wrong in itself, it's also it's a theft that sort of has so many downstream effects. When corruption, when money from public services goes to corruption, then those services aren't provided, meaning people have to find their own ways to make their way in the world, and that can lead to conflicts, that can lead to further sort of, that can lead to crime, that can lead to further
Even
sort of
chaos
harms
for
and
that
rights,
matter.
chaos, right? So I think that kind of corruption is also something that's important to be speaking loudly about, which is what we're doing now.
Okay. Well, legacy isn't a statue, it's a living thing. So when we come back, we confront how Kiko is weaponizing legacy in the digital age, and how the 40th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution is colliding with another Trillion Peso March. History is not just being remembered, it's being challenged. Stay with us.